ज्ञानस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मीलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपा कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकम्। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरो श्रीयुतापदकमलं श्रीगुरोन् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सहगणा रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधा कृष्णपादान् सहगणा ललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितंश्च हे कृष्णा करुणा सिन्धु दीनबन्धु जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिका कान्ता राधाकान्ता नमस्तुते। तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये। कल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्येव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। श्रीकृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। नमः ओं विष्णुपादाय कृष्ण प्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्ति वेदांत स्वामिनिधि नामिने नमस्ते सारस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी भाष्याद्यदेशधारिणे मूकं करोति वाचालं पंगुं लंघयते गिरिं यत्कृपातं अहं वन्दे श्रीगुरुं दीनदारिणं परमानंद माधवं श्री चैतन्य ईश्वरम्।
Hare Krishna. So we welcome you all for this Gita Mastery session. Hope you all have completed your quiz for chapter 7, which has been uploaded in the website. I'm hoping that you have completed, but I know that all of you have not completed because we checked the statistics yesterday. So it was not very encouraging because many of you have not yet completed your quiz for chapter 7. So we request you here that before this chapter 7 fades out of your consciousness, kindly go to your sacred Study Gita account, log in there, go for the Gita Mastery course, and please take the quiz of chapter 7. There are just 25 questions. I'm quite sure that you all can do well. It's all that you have to log in and go there. So please keep it as a Sunday things to do after the session immediately. That's the best. You can log in and do the quiz. Okay, so now here we are coming up with this session's quiz. This is based on just the first 4 verses of chapter 8, which we have covered in the last session. So here it is there on your screen. Read carefully. We want all of you to get sent up. We have received 73% of the responses. So we'll wait for another 20 seconds. Good to see all of you who have turned on your cameras. Good to see you seriously studying. Very, very happy. Krishna Kumar, Subhashini, Surabhi, Sridevi, Madan,
Dinesh.
Gita, Indulekha, Rajni, Annamalai, Ashok, Rama, Sai Suman. Sai Suman always turns on his camera.
We really appreciate that.
Lal Gudi, Smita, Swaminathan, Ramakrishna.
Arun. So thank you very much, all of you, for turning on your...
And with this, we will come to an end of our quiz. Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare,
Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So here we are sharing the result of what you all have chosen. The question number 1, where does Adi Yagya reside? 75% of you have got it right, in the heart of all living beings. Those who have chosen the first option, as actually that is also correct, but it is not all encompassing. So yes, he resides in the heart of human beings, but then he resides in the heart of all living beings.
Question 2, what is the eternal nature of Jiva to serve the Supreme Lord? First option is the right answer. Most of you got it right.
Question number 3. Adi Bhut is constantly changing physical world. So the option number 2 is right. And those of you who have not got it right, have missed it. Actually, those words are a little confusing and it needs more revision and brushing up. So what I request you is go back. These are simple verses. It is just that the Sanskrit words we are not connecting directly. So go back to these 4 verses, read it again 2-3 times and it will all become clear.
Question 4, what includes all demigods and their different planets? And the right answer is universal form of the Lord. That's absolutely the right answer. This is what we discussed in the last session. Adi Dev, the form of the Lord, which includes the entire cosmos.
And question number 5, karma generates material body for the living entity. So the third option is the correct option.
So what generates material body for the living entity? Of course, Supreme Lord has no interest in generating bodies for living entities. Material bodies. It is the living entity who acts, the material acts, punya or papa, because of which they generate different bodies.
So good, we have completed this quiz and let us proceed and see what we are going to learn today. Today's session is very, very, very important session. We request you all to be very attentive throughout the session and try to absorb as much as possible and remember the things which we will be discussing today, because today we are going to discuss what is the destination of dying person. Now, how many of us gathered here would die one day or the other? Write down in the chat window, I will. How many of you think that someday, far, far, far in the future, but someday you are going to die? You can type from our side, I will. Okay, good. So we have started getting the responses here. So we all know actually that we
Smita says, my body dies.
We all cannot escape death. We all would die one day. So the whole point is, what is my destination? Where do I go after death? So that is the question. This is extremely relevant to each and every one of us. So that is why I was saying that today's session is extremely important, because we are going to talk about what would be our destination at that time. And second point, how to remember Krishna at the time of death. So that is the second point what we would be covering.
Yes, so because we will be seeing the formula, what are the principle, what is the principle that governs our next body? At the time of death, what are the principles come in play because of which we get the next body? So that is what we're going to discuss. Point number 3, pure devotional service, the easiest way to Krishna. So that also Krishna will be talking here. Now this is very significant because we started from the beginning of Bhagavad Gita. Krishna spoke about Karma Yoga. And when we were reading Karma Yoga, it sounded, yes, we should do that. And then came Gyan Yoga. It was a little more difficult. And then Ashtanga Yoga was even more difficult. And now Krishna in 8th chapter will talk about Bhakti Yoga. What is pure devotional service? Krishna is going to explain in this particular chapter. And we'll see whether we can reach that. And 4th point of learning is that how does the Yoga Mishra Bhakta remembers Krishna? So Krishna also talks about this person who's practicing Ashtanga Yoga. Then he came in touch with devotees, he felt inspired, and now he wants to dedicate his life for worshipping, remembering Krishna. But then because of his long practice of yoga, he is not able to just do pure bhakti. So this Yoga Mishra Bhakta, how he remembers Krishna, so that we will see, and how he attains perfection. And finally, we'll see how to meditate on the Supreme Lord.
So this is chapter 8, Attaining the Supreme. Last session, we have already discussed about Arjuna's question. So Arjun asked 8 questions, out of which 7 has already been answered by Krishna. And as we discussed, that answer to the 8th question comprises the remaining chapter, which is how to attain Krishna at the time of death. So if you remember in chapter 7, verse 29, 30, last 2 verses, and Krishna was talking about prayana kale, which means at the time of death. If one knows me at the time of death. So from there, Arjun has picked up this question as how does one know Krishna at the time of death? So Krishna is talking about death now, the final exam, which as we discussed, everyone has to, there is no escape. We all have to get into that. So that is the final exam. And how do we pass this exam successfully is the content for these 4 very, very important verses.
Antakale cha mameva smaran muktva kalevaram yaha prayati samadbhavam yati nasti atra samshayaha. And whoever at the end of his life quits his body remembering me alone at once attains my nature. Of this there is no doubt. So this is probably one of the most significant verses of this chapter, and we want to bring all your attention here. This is also a memory verse. So those of you who are very interested in memorizing verses, this is one verse which you should memorize. Okay, so let's look at the different words. Krishna talks about Antakale, Antakal. Antakal means the final moment. So we need to understand so many activities we are doing. From morning today, we did so many different kinds of activities. The last week, the last month, the last year, the whole of life. So many activities we are doing. So many things that we think are our own. We may own a house, we may own different properties, we have a family to which we are attached to. So all these things are now going to end. Antakal is the time when we are actually going to sever our relationship with everything that we have known. It is like a one-way ticket. We are going to an unknown territory and we do not know, and we definitely know that we are not coming back. We are leaving everything behind. So that is what Antakal is. And Krishna is saying, Mam eva smaran muktva kalevaram. So he's saying, Mam, if you remember me. Krishna is very specific, me. He's not saying if you remember anyone. You remember your loved one. You remember your pet. You remember Devata. It's all okay. Krishna is not saying that. Krishna is saying, Mam eva. If you remember me alone. So then you come to me. And then he says, Smaran Muktva Kalevaram. So remembrance of me when you're leaving the body. Smaran, remembering Kalevaram. When this body, when we are getting out of this body, if that's the time when we actually remember Krishna, so that's the juncture. That is what is it? The 2 lanes. One, we take another body, and other, we go back to the Supreme Lord. So that is what Krishna is saying. Remember me at the time when you're leaving the body. And if you do that, Krishna says, Muktva means that we do not get another material body. That is what Muktva means. Mukti. Mukti means that we don't get another. The next body is not a material body.
Become free from the
material body. Yes, Mukti. So for example, I have fever. and now I'm okay. So then, which means I'm free from fever. My body is free from fever. I'm free from fever. So I have become mukt from this material disease. And he says, so if you remember me when leaving this body, you become free, and what you get? You get mad bhavam. You get a form that is similar to me, which means we get a form which is similar to Krishna, which means it is eternal. This body is temporary, but then we get a body which is eternal. It is full of knowledge. We are completely aware of ourselves and of our surroundings and of the Supreme Lord and of our relationship with Him. And we are full of bliss and happiness. So this bliss and happiness is also, which actually scriptures explain that we have no experience of this bliss, this great amount of happiness. There's no such thing available, we don't have an access to it in this material world. And finally, Krishna is saying, Nasti atra samshaya. Arjun, do not doubt my words. Do not doubt.
So the essence of this verse, how to know Krishna at the time of death, and Krishna himself is telling how do we remember? By remembering. But then death is such a painful experience. Garud Puran describes that a pain a person experiences at the time of death is equal to 42,000 Scorpio biting simultaneously. So in such a painful moment, is it easy to remember Krishna? Is it possible to remember Krishna? Or rather, I should be asking, whom do we remember when we are in pain? So it is a natural tendency, it is a natural psychology that we remember the person or the activity what I love most during my painful time. I automatically call out for that person. So how can I make Krishna such a person that at the time of death, I automatically remember him? So it is possible only for the pure soul, those people who are pure. Now, pure means no mixture, no contamination. So no material desires basically. So when I have only one and only spiritual desire, when I only want to please Krishna and serve Krishna, to that degree I would be pure. And how do I become pure? What is the process? How do I purify myself? So the process of purification is practice. Krishna will say in the upcoming verses that one has to do abhyas, yona kaunteya, that you have to practice. How do I practice? So here is a simple formula of practice. One is live in mode of goodness. So all the things what we are doing, our activities, be it eating or be it meeting people or be it reading some book or watching some television, the whole point is that everything has to be in mode of goodness so that I am not influenced by lower mode. So that is why we lay a lot of emphasis in having prasadam, because then whatever we eat, it is in mode of goodness, and that helps me in coming to mode of goodness. Then second is serve and think of Krishna. So throughout our day, can we channelize our thoughts, organize our thoughts in a manner that we are thinking of Krishna? So it is all about the bhav. See, ISKCON, it's Antarrashtriya Bhavnamrit Sangha. So bhavanamrit, bhav, what bhav or what consciousness I am having. So that is important. So can I think of Krishna in whatever activity I am doing? I'm not saying can I act everything for Krishna. I'm saying can I think of Krishna in whatever activity I am doing. So that is serving and thinking of Krishna. And this becomes possible when we chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So when we are chanting, that makes our life easier. Our 99% of spiritual advancement depends on how we are chanting. And while doing all these things, we also understand that we have a lot of baggage which we are carrying from our past lives. So many sinful activities we have already done. So the reactions are due. So when I am suffering, when I am having any problem, at that time, I have to have this understanding that whatever is coming in my way is actually the reaction of all my past sinful activities, and understanding that I tolerate the impediments. So this is how I will prepare my consciousness to remember Krishna at the time of death. And if I am able to do that, then what is the result? Is one acquires the same nature. So one acquires the same nature as Krishna. So one becomes, so these are the 8 aspects of Krishna's personality which one acquires. So first is one becomes sinless. So becomes free of the sinful activities, free of sinful tendencies, because we are not in the lower mode, and that is how a person becomes sinless. Second point, ageless. So no aging, no further aging, because there is no, I mean, it may be completely inconceivable for us, but in spiritual world, time factor does not exist. What does that mean? People do not grow old with time. See, time here in this life, it brings certain changes in our body. With time we take birth, with time we grow, with time we mature, with time we reproduce, with time we dwindle, and with time we finally die. But this way, time factor does not work in the spiritual world. So everyone is ageless, like Krishna. Krishna is Navyavan. He is always, Navyavan means youthful. So that is how we also become ageless. Third is deathless. So there is no death in spiritual world. As I said that there is no growing old. So similarly, there is no death in the spiritual world. No grief. A person becomes free of lamentation and hankering. That is the sole cause of our grief. We become attached to certain thing and we want certain thing and we don't get it, and then we lament or hanker. It can be an object, or it can be a relationship. Or we may have certain expectation from the relationship and the other person does not reciprocate to us the way we expect, and that is the cause of our grief. But then there everything is perfect. All relations are perfect because everything is spiritual and Krishna is in the center. So no grief.
So we are trying to remember Krishna. If we actually become successful remembering Krishna, the time of death, there is so much less we get. We get sinless, ageless, and deathless. Anyways,
Griefless.
Griefless and hungerless and thirstless. So there is, I don't know whether it's a good deal. Sounds like a good deal. So much less we are getting. So anyway, this body requires food. This body requires energy, and that is why you need to eat. We actually, as spirit soul, we do not require food. Okay. So it is ever active without any energy source. So therefore, there is no hunger. And in a spiritual form, there is no thirst. So this all relates, and it all actually belongs to the material body. This is like a machine. It requires fuel. It requires lubrication. I don't know, from water, for the body. So all that is not required because we no longer have a material body, and what we actually receive is bliss, as I was explaining. Those of you who know economics, you would know the law of diminishing marginal utility. If I have one rasgulla, we say, wow, this is so good. We have the another one, we say, oh, I'm really fortunate today, 2 rasgullas. I got the third and the fourth and fifth, and I say, now this is really good. But if I have 20 in front of me, when I know a person who can eat 20, but for most of us, it may not be so easy. Or if I say we have 100 in a bucket, then it no longer remains happiness. It becomes a curse if we are forced to eat all that. So this is how the material world is. Spiritual world, bliss, and the next moment is more blissful. And the next moment is even more blissful than the previous moment, and happiness is ever increasing. Now, we don't have such an experience. We don't think such a thing can exist, but that is the nature of the spiritual world. And beautiful part is that our desires get fulfilled instantaneously in the spiritual world. Right? We have, now imagine, if we are in the spiritual world, who can go to the spiritual world is one who loves the Supreme Lord. Right? So when we love someone, we want to serve him, and we want to serve him in unlimited ways. Because we have resources there. So we have Kalpa Vriksha trees, which can give whatever we want. We have Surabhi cows, who can also give whatever we want. And we have Chintamani stones. The whole, the whole ground is of Chintamani stones, which means Chintamani, whatever we desire, it is have the capacity to fulfill those desires. So we can serve Lord unlimitedly, and we can have such beautiful reciprocation from him. So this is what we acquire. This is what it means that we acquire the same nature as that of the Lord. Mad bhavam.
Yam yam vapi smaran bhavam tyajate ante kalevaram Tam tam evaiti kaunteya sada tad bhava bhavitaha yam yam vapi smaran bhavam. Whatever state of being one remembers when he quits his body, ante kalevaram, at the time of quitting his body, whatever a person remembers, O son of Kunti, that state he will attain without fails. Ada tad bhava bhavitaha. Always this happens, that whatever I remember at the time of death, that would actually, that state I would attain in my next birth. So if I'm remembering Krishna, perfection. If I'm remembering anything other than Krishna, complete failure. Complete failure, disaster. Why disaster? Jivan mrityu jara vyadhi. I get into the womb of a mother again. And from there the miseries begin. So taking birth is difficult, living life is difficult, growing old is difficult, dying is difficult, everything is difficult. So everything, the whole purpose is defeated if I do not remember Krishna at the time of death. So this is the principle, this is a law which Krishna is stating. This is the general law of destination after death. Whatever one remembers, that state one attains without fail.
So death is actually some of us who have gone through an operation and we were giving general anesthesia, which means a completely unconscious coma-like state for 1, 2, 3 hours, whatever the duration of the surgery was. So we just don't remember anything from that. And then as the anesthesia fades away, we again regain consciousness. So death is also something like that. So we are, our mind is absorbed in something. We are living our life with certain kind of aspirations, with certain kind of belief system. And then it's a coma state or a deep unconscious state. And then we again regain consciousness. As Sugita was explaining, the womb of some other mother. So that is how, you know, the consciousness continues to carry from one body to another body. So we have some very, very important life lessons from this. There is no guarantee when one will die. There is no guarantee. But it is guaranteed that one must die. Therefore, we must be prepared for death at any moment. This is intelligence actually. Because some of us who are young, we may think, no, so much more. I'm going to live, you know. I've seen everybody else my age and they live at least till 60, 70, 80. You know, those who are 70, 80, they may think, I've got another 5, 10 years at least. Nobody thinks, you know, that next moment could be my final moment.
Actually, that is what, when Yudhishthir Maharaj was asked that question, that what is the most amazing thing in the material world? And he said that we look around and we see that everyone is dying. And we firmly believe that it's not going to happen to me. So we do all type of planning. We do all long-term planning, short-term planning. But major portion of today's population, they fail to do their death planning, which is like as certain as a rock. It has to come, but people fail to do their death planning. They do everything else. So a small announcement there. So preparing for death is the subject matter of today evening's session, a special session. Part 1 I took the last Sunday. It is known as Back to Godhead. And today evening we have another session because we got very encouraging response for the last session. So we have planned for a second session today. So I invite you all to join us for this Back to Godhead session in the evening at 7 p.m. IST. We'll be going live at YouTube and Facebook. And if there is a time zone difference, then you can catch up later, watch the session, because the whole session is aimed at preparing ourselves to go back home, back to Godhead.
And the links are posted in the chat window. You can copy it from there. In fact, I attended the last session. I heard Sukirti, and there are some amazing examples that Sukirti is talking about spiritual warriors who actually
in real life,
in recent years, they have actually exemplified these principles. So that was most exciting, because many times we take examples from Srimad Bhagavatam and from other Vedic literature. But we have these recent examples of spiritual warriors, modern day spiritual warriors who have actually applied those principles in life. So it was very nice. Thank you, Sugirti, for that. So, like we have Life Insurance Corporation of India, LIC, we should have a Death Insurance Corporation, and that is your copy of Bhagavad Gita. Insure your death.
Our only duty is to think of Krishna, so that even though we may die at any moment, we will attain spiritual salvation. That is our only duty. So we must focus as how we can always remember Krishna. And this reminds me, the session which we took during our Bhakti Yoga Made Easy, the whole topic was Smaranam or remembrance. So those of you who have not watched it, kindly go to our YouTube channel video playlist. You will find this Bhakti Yoga Made Easy, remembrance. It's very, very important. And why I remembered that suddenly is because there we taught a jingle. Always remember Krishna, never forget Krishna. Hari Hari Bolo, Hari Hari Bol. Eating, remember Krishna, never forget Krishna. Hari Hari Bolo, Hari Hari Bol. So like that, not only eating, but all the aspects, whatever we are doing, actually our goal should be always remember Krishna and never forget Krishna. And that is what Srila Prabhupada is saying through this life lesson, that this is our only duty. So this is the highest priority. This is where we have to go. Like I often give that example that if you have to go to the, let's say, airport, and there are some family members with you in the car traveling to the airport. So you see to all their needs. If somebody asks you to stop somewhere and they want to buy something, you stop the car. If you have to fill the petrol, you stop the car and fill the petrol. If you have to, there are red signals, zebra crossing, you stop there. You follow all the rules and regulations. You are taking care of everything. But in the whole process, you are not forgetting where you are going, right? So we always remember the goal, and the goal is Anta Kalecha Mameva Smaran Muktva Kalevaram. At the time of death, I have to remember Krishna, and for remembering Krishna at the time of death, I must always remember Krishna.
And we have one more life lesson, because this verse is so important. How to make sure that one thinks of Krishna at death? Practice remember during one's life, not just at death. Because I remember when people come to know about this verse, they say, oh, that's interesting. I have to remember Krishna at the time of death. Well, I think now I've got a shortcut. Now I can live the life whichever way I want. All I have to do is just, at the time of death, Krishna I have to do. Right? I have to try to remember Krishna. But it doesn't work that way. The time of death, as Sugita is explaining, is very, very difficult. It is very, very difficult time. The body does not cooperate. It is choking. It is, we are just being pushed out of this home that we were living in for so many years, right? It's very difficult. The body doesn't cooperate. The mind is disoriented. So unless we have really practiced it well, that remembrance won't come to us. So this is the time when we should start.
Tasmat sarveshu kaleshu mamanusmaryudhya cha mayyarpita mano buddhir mame vaishyasya samshayah. Therefore, Arjuna, you should always think of me in the form of Krishna, and at the same time carry out your prescribed duty of fighting. With your activities dedicated to me and your mind and intelligence fixed on me, you will attain me without doubt. So now in the two verses, Krishna says that remember me at the time of death and you will attain me. So Arjun may start thinking, okay, this sounds easy. I don't have to fight. Remember, that's how Bhagavad Gita started. So Arjun starts getting these ideas. Okay, so probably Krishna is telling, I don't have to fight. I just have to remember Krishna. So Krishna immediately, understanding that concern, answers this, and he says, at the same time carry out your prescribed duty of fighting. So Krishna is telling Arjuna, fighting, remember Krishna, never forget Krishna. Hari Hari Bolo, Hari Hari Bol. Now it may sound very difficult. How to remember Krishna while fighting? I mean, I'm standing here in the battlefield, I'm killing people, and yet I have to remember Krishna also, and I have to kill people. So this is the shortcut for that, what Krishna has given. At the mental level, in the mind, we are thinking of Krishna. At the physical level, with my body and my senses, I am performing my duties and offering the result of all my duties to Krishna, so that at the physical level also I am serving Krishna. And all this mental level and physical level is possible if at the intellectual level, if my intelligence is completely convinced, which means if I have complete faith. And how do I get that faith? By reading books like Srimad Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita, Srimad Bhagavad Gita. So when we read, when we try to understand, when we ask relevant questions, and we try to put everything in practice, that is how our intelligence gets convinced. So this is the principle what Krishna is giving here.
Krishna reveals the process and guarantees the goal. So Krishna is revealing the process. He is telling us what to do, and he is telling that if you do whatever I'm telling you to do, then you will get this. He is guaranteeing the goal. He is telling, do not doubt. So Krishna is giving us personal counseling. He is giving us personal guidance through these verses. So the point, as we were discussing some time back, it's a lot of us have this question: how do I remember Krishna all the time? I mean, I chant, yes, I can remember Krishna. I read Bhagavad Gita, yes. If I'm attending these sessions, yes, I can remember Krishna. But then, when I'm doing a job, when I'm teaching, I'm a teacher, I'm teaching, or when I'm doing my job, or I don't know, I can't remember. I'm not able to remember. So Krishna talks about it in the next verse, this 8th verse.
Abhyasa yoga yuktena chetasa nanya paramam purusham divyam yati partha anuchintayan.
He who meditates on me as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, his mind constantly engaged in remembering me, undeviated from the path, he, O Parth, is sure to reach me. So Krishna is saying that anybody who remembers me, meditates on me, his mind is constantly absorbed in me, he is engaging in remembering me, undeviated from the path, he does not deviate, is sure to reach me. Right? So Krishna opens this verse with a word called abhyas. We have to practice this. We may not be able to do now, but can we do it for a few minutes in a day? Can we do it for half an hour a day? So this is what actually mindfulness is all about. So when I'm sitting down for chanting, I cut out all the distractions, because this is my time with the Supreme Lord. I will sit here and I will chant. This is my time that I would like to read few verses from Bhagavad Gita and meditate on their meanings. When I'm cooking and I'm offering to the Lord, I want to please Him with that offering, and then by honoring His prasad, His mercy, this is Krishna's mercy. By honoring it, I purify my existence and I develop love for Him. So when I perform these spiritual activities again and again and again and again, then gradually I will begin to think of Krishna. Right? So this is what Krishna is talking about. And please understand, see, I'm sure most of you, completed your school, went to college. So when we go to college, there is 4-year program, and we have to clear all those exams and those assessments and all of that. We need to do that. And at the end of then 4 years, we can receive a degree. So if we have done all that, we receive a degree. So similarly, if we practice now, improve our Krishna consciousness, try our best, then gradually at the time of death, we will succeed. It's very logical, straightforward. So please understand, whatever spiritual practices that we have, some of us chanting just 1 round, some of us chanting 4 rounds, some of us chanting 16 rounds, some of us are reading, some of us may not be reading Bhagavad Gita. All our spiritual practices will also come for a test at the time of death. All our spiritual practices will be tested when we are in our final moments in this body.
So how do we remember Krishna? What is the most effective way? What is the easiest way? By chanting the holy names. Because I'm sure many of you would have already experienced, and that is why you are all chanting. So when we chant, what happens is that helps us in remembering Krishna. So something from the class may come up in your mind, some Krishna Leela, what you have heard or read may come to your mind because you have repeating Krishna's name. So revival of memory of Krishna. What else also happens is when we are chanting, actually our ears in hearing, our tongue in chanting, our mind in focusing. So all these three things are engaged in Krishna's service. Even our fingers are engaged when we are chanting on the beads and we are
Touch.
yeah, so touch, the sense of touch. So many of our senses are engaged in one single activity to serve Krishna, to please Krishna. And this is how we attain Supreme Lord and his planet.
Yes, so Srila Prabhupada stresses so much of stress on chanting, actually on the these last two verses that we discussed. So how to remember Krishna, chanting Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Krishna is non-different from this transcendental sound vibration. The name of the Lord and Krishna, they are non-different. So when we chant Hare Krishna, so the Lord's form is within and without, right? So Lord appears within and without. And if we can chant whole of life, then we can remember, then we can chant at the time of death, right? Because we have been chanting whole of our life. So when the situation even becomes extremely difficult, we can still chant the holy names, we can still think of the Lord. And another very important and very interesting thing is there to remember Krishna is to do deity worship. So those of us who have deities, some of you have Laddu Gopal, some of you may have Radha Krishna, some of you may have Gaur Nitai deities. So if you have deities at home, or if you don't, if you have a picture of the Lord at home, which is equally good. So if you have a painting, beautiful painting, picture of Krishna, you offer worship to that form. So you can offer Arati, you can offer Bhoga, and you can celebrate festivals. There are different festivals which come at different parts or times of the year. So we celebrate those festivals. So what happens is, I'm sure those of you who have deities at home and who are worshipping the deities in proper mood, the deities become the center point of the family, right? I know of families where something which comes, when they receive something new, they offer it to the deities, because they consider them as the head of the family. So that's how the whole family, the whole daily life revolves around the Supreme Lord. So daily worship is also very, very significant in keeping Krishna in the center. And of course, when we learn, we do all this, we should also try to share this knowledge with others. So that will also help us to remember Krishna.
And constant remember leads to remembrance at death. Very simple formula. So moving to the next section, title is Attaining the Supreme, and this comprises of verse number 9 to 22. And in today's session, we intend to complete the first subsection of this section, remembering Krishna through meditation, from verse number 9 to 13. And this is specifically for Yoga Mishra Bhakta. So we are talking, I hope we remember Yoga Mishra Bhakta, or the Ashtang yogis who come in a contact with devotee and they start doing some devotional services. So they have been doing this process of Ashtang yoga probably for many lifetimes. So Ashtang yoga is a process which we discussed in detail in chapter number 6. Hope we still have those memories fresh. So let us see how these devotees, how this Yoga Mishra Bhakta, they meditate on the Supreme Lord, and how do they attain the Supreme Lord. Kavim Puranam Anushasitaram Anor Aniyam Sa Anusmaredya Sarvasya Dhataram Achintya Rupam Aditya Varnam Tamasa Prasatat. So there are total 10 qualities which is mentioned here, and it is mentioned that these Ashtang yogi, they meditate on these 10 qualities, starting from Kavim, second is Puranam, Anushasitaram. Let's see what are these. So here we have 10 ways of thinking or meditating on Krishna, starting from the first one, Kavi. So Kavi generally we understand is a poet. Kavi also means a person who knows everything. So how Krishna knows the past, the present and the future. Krishna himself tells Arjuna that I know the past, present and future, and we of course know that Krishna knows past, present and future. Second is Krishna is beyond all material conception. Krishna does not have a material body like ours. Krishna's body does not age. So Krishna is beyond all the material conception. Whatever in material world, what we experience, everything has a beginning and has an end. Krishna, no beginning and no end. So that is the Supreme Lord. Third is Sarvasya Dhataram, or maintainer of everything. So again in the 7th chapter, I guess 7th verse, we heard about a pearl necklace and how Krishna is like the thread of that pearl necklace, and he is maintaining multiple universes like that. So that is how he becomes maintainer of everything. Fourth, he is oldest or Puranam. So everything, he's the source of everything. Everything is born out of him. Everything comes from him. So he is the oldest. In fact, as I said, he does not have a beginning. So he has always been there. He is eternal and he is the first one from whom everything is coming out. But that does not mean that Krishna is old, like how we understand the old.
Yeah, sometimes actually God is depicted with white beard, white hair, some really old fellow. Sometimes in some religious conceptions, they have that understanding that God is very old.
But Krishna is Navyavan. Krishna is always youthful.
And then we have the next quality of Krishna, that he is smaller than the smallest. So imagine he is the maintainer of everything and yet he can be smaller than the smallest, which means he has contradictory qualities. Usually we see that a person has either this quality or that quality, either he is good or bad or whatever. But here Krishna has contradictory qualities. In one person he is smaller than the smallest. That means that he pervades the entire universe. Every atom in this universe has his presence, as do all the living entities. So Krishna resides in the heart of all living entities. And then we start from here, bottom, from your right side. Krishna is transcendental, beyond this material nature. So again, this point is being made that he is beyond the modes of material nature. In fact, he is the source of this material nature. So this is a Shakti of the Lord, Maya Shakti. Krishna is Shaktiman. He is the controller, possessor of this energy. He is beyond this. He is luminous night like the sun, Aditya Varnam. So our body absorbs light. Krishna's body radiates light. So, and this light is not the light coming from the tube light. It is some spiritual light. Okay, and then next quality of Krishna is Anushashitaram, which means he's the controller. Yes, it is understood that not even a leaf moves without his sanction. So that's how he's the controller. He's always a person, and it is indicated by the word Rupam. Again, so many conceptions, many major religions in this world do not accept form of Lord, but here it's explained very clearly. Krishna is saying, he's explaining himself that I have a transcendental form, and all of this is because Krishna is inconceivable. Achintya, Achintya means, Chintan means contemplation. We can contemplate on things that we know, we have learned, we have experienced, that we can conceive. Krishna is beyond all our conceptions. He is beyond our logic. He is beyond our ability to think and logically arrive at some conclusions. Krishna is beyond that. He is Achintya, or inconceivable.
So qualities arise from personality, not from a void. So that is how we understand, because Krishna has so many qualities. So Krishna is the source of all the qualities, and qualities are in people. So he has a personality. Now proceeding, we will have the next 4 verses, which is actually describing the process as how these yogis, they meditate on Krishna so that they remember him at the time of death, or they attain him at the time of death. So this process is not for the devotees. I mean, this is not a process of bhakti yogi. This is the process of Yog Mishra Bhakta. So please do not get perplexed by the difficult process which is coming up on your screen. So here we have shloka number 10 and 11, We will read both the verses and then we will have a summary here. One who at the time of death fixes his life hair between the two eyebrows, by the strength of yoga. Yog Balena is mentioned there. So by the strength of yoga, with an undeviating mind, engages himself in remembering the Supreme Lord in full devotion, will certainly attain to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So please note, though this is for a yogi, yet Krishna specifically mentions that with full devotion. So devotion is absolutely necessary to attain Krishna.
Yeah, so devotion to Krishna is the catalyst. We may have all the chemicals in place, the reactions not taking place. Why? Because there is no catalyst. So similarly, we may practice all the different types of yoga, but if devotion to Krishna is not there, reaction won't happen. Persons who are learned in the Vedas, who utter Omkar, and who are great sages in the renounced order, enter into Brahman. Desiring such perfection, one practices celibacy. I shall now briefly explain to you this process by which one may attain salvation. So here the word is one may attain salvation, because there are some more conditions which we will be discussing next week. So here it's a summary of these process. This is a summary. So one, he fixes his life hair between the eyebrows, reciting Omkar. He is chanting Om. Of course, his mind is undeviating. If his mind is deviating, then it'll take much longer time. He's learned in Vedas and he's in renounced order. So he is very well educated spiritually. He's spiritually literate. And he is renounced order, which means already given up his family and his all other responsibility. He's taken sannyas and he is just doing this practice. He practices celibacy. So this is another very interesting aspect. Celibacy is at three levels: physically, not to engage in the physical act of sex, but not just that, it is also with words and with the mind. So the person, the celibate, does not think of sex life even in his thoughts or speaks about it. So that's how he practices celibacy, and he engages in remembering Krishna as full devotion. So this is the process this yogi is practicing, and he is waiting for his perfection.
So here we have a couple of life lessons. Now, this is being compared to the devotee. So a pure devotee does not practice such yoga. Which yoga? The one which was described on the previous slide. But because he's always engaged in Krishna consciousness, at death he can remember the Supreme Personality of Godhead by his grace. So he doesn't follow this, he doesn't take sannyas, he stays with his family, he takes care of his prescribed duties, and yet such a person can perfect himself by remembering Krishna.
The social construction of the world has changed so much that once practicing celibacy seems impossible. And that is very true. I think all of you would agree on this point. So the only hope is chanting Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Shloka number 12. The yogic situation is that of detachment from all sensual engagements, closing all the doors of the senses and fixing the mind on the heart and the life air at the top of the head. One establishes himself in yoga.
So Krishna is continuing to further explain this process. After being situated in this yoga practice and vibrating sacred syllable Om, the supreme combination of letters, if one thinks of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, quits his body, he will certainly reach the spiritual planets. So you please see that Krishna talked about Antakale Chamama. In that verse, he's talking about remembering me. Then he says the general principle, Bhavam, whatever remembers, one attains that form. And then now we see here Krishna is again saying that all of this is okay. The different processes described in the 12th and 13th verse is all about putting the body, controlling the body and the mind with one goal, that one can actually think of Krishna at the time of quitting this body. So this is how Ashtanga Yogi practices Yoga Mishra Bhakta. So this word Yog, some of you may know that Yog means addition or plus sign, right? So what is our current situation? I minus God. Right? That is our current situation. I minus God. God is not really the top priority of my life. Right? So, but what is Krishna consciousness? That I minus God, I just draw a vertical line in between. I plus God. Right? So that is what Krishna consciousness is now all about. And we saw whether it is Karma Yogi or Gyan Yogi or Ashtang Yogi or Karma Mishra Bhakta, whatever. Time of death, if one remembers Krishna, that is the common factor. If one wants the result of his yoga, one has to remember Krishna at the time of death. Then they will get the result of their practice.
So here we have the summary of shloka number 12 and 13. It continues, Krishna continues to describe the process that such a yogi does not engage in any sense enjoyment, no sensual pleasure, completely focusing on the supreme mind, focused on the super soul, life force, or what we call prana or life force. So because of his yoga practices, yoga balena, on the power of yoga, what he does is life force on top of the head. So he brings his prana on the top of his head, his eyes, as we discussed in 10 and 11 verse, that he's focusing on here between the eyebrows, chanting Om, remembering the Supreme Lord. So if a person can get into all this situation by the process of Ashtang Yoga and he remembers Krishna, then he attains Krishna. So this is for a Yoga Mishra Bhakta who has, as Prabhu was explaining, has already given up his family duties. He has taken sannyas. He has studied lot of scriptures. He is completely convinced and he's convinced of the process. He finds that this process is the best process. But then as we discussed, or rather as Krishna has been discussing, that there are multiple choices there. Krishna has given us different processes. So this process, though it is effective, but it is not very effective or not designed for the current yuga. So we are living in Kali Yuga and the situation is quite unfavorable to follow whatever we have discussed in verse number 9 to 13. So in the next class, we would be discussing about verse number 14 to 16, remembering Krishna through bhakti or pure devotional service. So next verses onward, Krishna is hard hitting on bhakti, so don't miss it. Be there for the next class. And with this, we have come to an end of today's session. So any doubts, any clarification, kindly send at the Q&A link. We will go live at 5 p.m. for the question answer session. Also, there is a very important announcement. We were talking about death, and somehow, unfortunately, we are witnessing a lot in our current situation as of now because of the pandemic which the entire country is facing. So as a service, we have extended a special prayer opportunity for all those who are either themselves suffering, or if you have anyone in your family members who is suffering and whom you think needs prayers. So what we request you is kindly send the name, nakshatra, rashi and gotra. 4 things: name, nakshatra, rashi and gotra of the person on this WhatsApp number, which is given here below, our WhatsApp number. If you send all these 4 things, daily we are organizing special prayers, that is Konchinai, for the well-being, spiritual, mental, emotional, physical well-being of the COVID affected people. So, yes. So thank you all very much. Looking forward, 5 p.m. Q&A and 7 p.m. Please don't miss it. It's a very interesting session about Back to Godhead.
Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama.